What's up, softball players? I'm Coach Dan Blewett. In today's video, let's talk about a really important subject for your entire career, which is how to handle criticism well as a player. So obviously, you're going to get yelled at by coaches. You're going to have some coaches that are harder on you than others. And this is going to be a thing in your career as you rise up through the ranks. So today I'm going to give you a couple strategies and we'll talk about what you need to know and understand about handling criticism. All right, so again, today's video, how do you handle criticism as a player? This is something that you are gonna run into. I mean, I played pro baseball, so I've had my moments where I've been chewed out, embarrassed, all that stuff. So let's get to it. So number one, the first thing you need to understand is some criticism from coaches is destructive, some of it is constructive. And so you as a player, you have to learn to discern between the two and figure out the difference. So if you make a blunder in the field, whether it's a mental error or a physical error, a coach could yell, "What are you, stupid? Like, how could you have missed that ball?" Something that's just aimed, whether they mean it to do it or not, to just sort of tear you down. However, coaches might yell at the same angry tone, "You need to focus, that's not good enough." And there could be other factors involved. Maybe you weren't really prepared. Maybe you didn't have a good practice week. Maybe your head really wasn't in the game and now you've cost the team. So those are two different things. Coaches do need to wake you up sometimes. Sometimes if you're just like going through the motions, they'll yell that stuff. But understand that there's a difference between a personal attack and criticism, or just coaches trying to wake you up and get you back into the game, because they have to do that. Not every conversation, remember, can be a gentle, polite little talk about the error that you made or the really silly blunder that you made. But the big thing is here, when you can figure out the difference and say, okay, yeah, coach is right, I need to get my head in the game, like I'm better than that, then you don't have to shut down, because you can't shut down from every piece of criticism, whether it's constructive or otherwise. Even when coaches are just blatantly being mean and tearing you down, and that's not right, you still can't shut down and then stop helping your team, stop helping yourself, start moping, all that stuff. That's not a good reaction. Number two, and this goes back to the first one, what is the coach's motive? I'll be honest, I'm a pretty nice guy, but I yell when I was a head coach. If players are mentally not where they need to be, or they're doing stuff that we've been over and over again, I'll yell. Now, I'm not trying to embarrass anyone. I'm not trying to hurt anyone's feelings, but I will snap you out of it. So you have to understand that when I see a player who's not playing to his or her potential, I'll get in their face. But my motivation, and all my players would know this, my motivation is to make you better, is to help our team win and to help you grow long term. And that's most coaches' motivations. Not all, but you need to read between the lines. And the way you do that is, number one, don't jump to conclusions and immediately shut down or immediately listen to your emotions. Calm down, let it sit, think about it for a minute, and then react. Consider the message. Even if they're a little bit mean to you or a little bit rough about it, what was the message? Was the message that you're better than this, that play needs to be made, that you need to work harder, prepare better, show up in a better mindset, whatever it is? Let it sink in a little bit. Don't just jump to the conclusion of coaches being mean and coach is wrong, like I couldn't have made that play, whatever. It's an increasing problem, I think, with young people today, that you sort of trust your emotions before anything else. You can trust your emotions to a degree, but sometimes your emotions are not correct. If you always trust your snap judgment of the way you feel, especially if you're an overly sensitive kind of person, you're going to put yourself in a really tough position long term, because any harsh tone of voice, any kind of yelling, even when it's constructive and good for you, you're going to shut down or you're going to be flustered and you're not going to be able to consider the message. So understand, if a person's trying to help you and they just use a sharp tone of voice, or they're critical in front of you, or they're critical in front of other people, do you need to get upset when you know that their motivation is to help you? And maybe they're singling you out in public because they know maybe this is what it takes, a little bit of embarrassment to really get them to snap into shape. I've had that happen to me in the past, and I remember those moments, and they really did help me turn a corner and grow, because I didn't take it personally. I was just like, yeah, I didn't like how that felt, and I didn't like the way I played. So I don't want that to happen again. So, let's go. So just be cautious here. Don't jump to being upset first. Use the message. If it's constructive, let it sit, let it simmer. Don't always jump to the emotional state the way something makes you feel. That's not always the best way to react. Number three, you have to understand that criticism, especially on the field about your level of play, is looking for progress. Coaches are looking for progress, and you are looking for progress. You cannot fall prey to perfectionism. So when you're self-evaluating, you miss a ground ball, you give up a bunch of runs one day, you don't pitch well, you don't hit well, you don't play well, you have to look to progress, not perfection. So what that means is, look, perfectionism, it's a trash way to live your life. You cannot be perfect in any aspect of life. It will just break you down if you're trying to get a 99 on every test, if you're trying to be, the top of your class in med school, which those are good goals, but you have to give yourself some leeway. In sports, you will not hit 600 every season. You will not throw a shutout every game. Even if you have a 2 ERA or a 1 ERA for the year or a 400 batting average, you're going to go 0 for 12 at some point. You're going to get shelled one game and then, sort of boost your average back down with a one hitter or a shutout or a 1-run game, whatever. But perfectionism does not work. And a lot of players get upset with constructive criticism because it breaks them and it jars them where they feel like, I'm not perfect, and this is telling me that I'm not perfect, and I'm not okay with not being perfect. You have to be okay with not being perfect. It doesn't exist. But if every day you're working hard and you're focusing on getting better, then you're going to meet your goals long term, and your goals long term should be to be the best possible player that you can be. So when coach points out a new flaw, when coach says, hey, that ground ball's got to be fielded, or hey, your swing still needs work, you got to get back in the batting cage, just remind yourself, well, hey, was it better than a week ago? Was it better than a month ago? Was it better than a year ago? It takes a long time. And again, you're looking for progress. You're not looking for perfectionism. And the next point that I want to make here is, and this should be a good analogy because all of you are probably students who are listening to this, red pen makes for a better final paper. When I was in high school, they still used red pen. I know they don't use red pen a lot in school today because teachers are so afraid of hurting your feelings, which I think is sad. I had my papers marked up, really marked up by some good teachers that cared about me. They marked my papers up because they wanted me to learn better grammar, better vocabulary, better sentence structure, and I became a pretty good writer because of it. When I look at those papers, I remember feeling shocked sometimes, like, whoa, this paper is covered in red. Did I get an F? And then I look at my grade and it's like, oh, B plus. So I had to marry the two where it's like lots of red pen, but I got a pretty good grade. So then you're like, well, what's the disconnect here? And then you're like, oh, well, clearly I did a good job or a good enough job, and they're just trying to make me better. So if the flaws are marked in red pen and then you fix them, what happens? You get a better grade on your paper, right? That's how this works. If your flaws are not marked, if you need a coach or a teacher who never points out when you're struggling, you're going to get a false sense of when you're doing well, and you're going to get a bad grade in the end. And this happens in softball, happens in baseball when coaches are too kind and too gentle and they don't want to hurt your feelings because they know your feelings are going to be easily hurt. You're not going to get the constructive criticism you need to improve on the things that you struggle with and be a better player long term. If the red pen is on draft 1, draft 2 will have less red pen. And if there's still red pen on draft 2, draft 3 will be even better. So you have to remember that coaches that care about you, they will never stop pointing out ways you could be better. They will always find something to criticize constructively that's going to make you better. Even in the major leagues, I see players in the major leagues make mental mistakes, make silly pitch calls. They're better than I was, right? I was not a major leaguer. But even then, as someone who played at a high level, I can see that these players are still mortals. They're still not perfect. So the perfectionism, and they still have coaches that are going to help them get better. So remember, number one, is it destructive criticism where they're just being mean and spiteful? In that case, whatever. Or is it constructive? Number two, what's the motive of your coach when they're calling you out or pointing out your flaws or being harsh or tough on you? Number three, look for progress, not perfection. No one survives mentally with perfectionism. It breaks you down over time. Be gentle on yourself. If you're doing well, keep doing well. And lastly, remember, red pen means you're going to be better in the long term. So accept that red pen and coaches pointing out your flaws in your game is going to make you the player that you want to be one day if you allow yourself to hear that message. And the last thing I want to mention, you're a valuable person no matter how well or how poorly you play on the field. And that is a big thing. When you feel mentally safe, where it doesn't matter what happens on the field. My mom and dad are still going to love me. My coach is still going to be proud of me. My teammates are still going to pick me up. And I still believe in myself, whether I go 0 for 4 or 4 for 4. That's the best mindset that you can be in. And I hope that your family members help foster that and your coaches and teammates help foster that. So you're all a big family, whether you do well or you don't. But even if they don't, I'm here to tell you that your self-esteem should not be wrapped up in how well you play a softball game. That's just not the way it is. Your value as a person is completely separate from how you play on the field. So just remember that. If you make a bunch of errors, you don't need to be that hard on yourself. You're still you. You're still good. You still have value. So you don't have to worry as much when someone criticizes you, when you feel like you've fallen short, or when you're not playing your best. All right. So hopefully today's video was helpful. I know it can be tough and it can really sting. And I've had a lot of those moments myself where you're like, God, it bursts your bubble and you feel like you're failing, but you're not. It's part of the process. It's draft 1, draft 2, draft 3, and someday draft 17 of you might be a successful college softball player or pro player or whatever your goal is. All right. Thanks again for watching. I'm Coach Stan Blewett, and I'll see you here in the next video.